How many of you are out there?
15, ma'am. Please, we've got a kid going down.
Going down? What do you mean going down?
He's 22. He collapsed in the snow half a mile back. We carried him here.
Oh my God. Is he breathing?
Barely. He stopped shivering 10 minutes ago. That means his body's giving up.
Lord Jesus, why didn't you call somebody?
No signal. No houses. Yours is the only light on this whole road. Just please don't let this boy die in the snow.
Get him inside, now! All of you, move!
15 frozen strangers poured into the home of a 74-year-old woman who lived alone, with a broken furnace and almost nothing in her pantry. But what happened inside that house, and what showed up on her street the very next morning, no one saw coming. But to understand why that night mattered, you have to understand who Sadie Brooks was before anyone knew her name. Ridgemont, Minnesota. Population just under 2,000 and shrinking every year. The kind of town where the gas station doubles as the post office, where the only grocery store closes at 6, where kids grow up counting the days until they're old enough to leave. Main Street had more boarded-up windows than open ones. The hardware store shut down 3 years ago. The barber shop after that. Brenda Whitfield's diner was still hanging on, barely, mostly because Brenda was too stubborn to quit. That was Ridgemont, a town the rest of the country forgot existed. And right in the middle of it, 2 miles outside town on Route 11, sat a little farmhouse with a sagging porch and plastic sheeting over 3 of its windows. That was Sadie's house. Earl bought it in 1974, the year they got married. Back then it was modest but solid, a 2-bedroom place with a good roof, a working furnace, and a yard big enough for a garden. That was 50 years ago. Now the porch leaned to one side like it was tired of standing. The furnace made a sound like a sick animal every time it kicked on. And the roof had been leaking in the back bedroom for 2 years straight. Sadie kept a bucket under the worst spot. She emptied it every single night before bed. Every single night. She'd called 3 roofers. The cheapest quote was $4,000. She didn't have $4,000. She didn't have $400. Sadie retired 8 years ago from the Ridgemont Unified School District. 31 years as the head cook. She made breakfast and lunch for every kid in that building. 3 generations of them. Some of those kids now had kids of their own, and Sadie had fed them too. Her pension was $1,140 a month. Earl's VA survivor benefits added $450. That's $1,590 total every month. Property taxes, heating oil, blood pressure medication, arthritis pills. That's where the money went. Every month, the same math. Every month, something had to give. She hadn't bought herself new clothes in 2 years. Her winter coat was Earl's old Army field jacket from Desert Storm, olive green, patched at both elbows with fabric she'd cut from one of his old shirts. She wore it every day from November to March. Earl would have hated that. He would have driven to the Goodwill in Rochester and come back with 3 coats, all the wrong size, and insisted every one of them fit perfectly. But Earl wasn't here anymore. He passed 6 years ago. Pancreatic cancer, fast and merciless. Diagnosed in April, gone by September. They never had children. They tried. For years they tried. It just never happened. Earl never blamed her. She never blamed him. They just carried it quietly, the way people do when the hurt is too deep for words. After Earl died, the house got quieter, and then quieter still. Her sister in Milwaukee, her only sibling, had dementia now. Last time Sadie called, her sister asked who she was. Sadie hung up and sat in Earl's chair for an hour without moving. But here's the thing about Sadie Brooks. She never let the sadness win. She hummed hymns while she cooked, even when she was cooking for one. She waved at every car that passed on Route 11, even when they didn't wave back. She baked cornbread for Denise Powell's kids across the road, even when her own pantry was running thin. Denise was the closest thing Sadie had to family, a single mother of two. Her boy Reggie, 10 years old, called Sadie Nana Sadie and showed up at her door almost every afternoon. Sadie loved that boy like he was her own blood. Everyone in Ridgemont knew Sadie. She'd fed their children. She'd fed them. But knowing someone and taking care of someone, those are two very different things. The town was too broke and too exhausted to do much. Brenda saved her the day-old rolls from the diner. A neighbor plowed her driveway once after a big storm. But nobody fixed her roof. Nobody replaced her furnace. Nobody asked if she was eating enough. And Sadie never asked. That's who she was. You want to know the kind of woman Sadie Brooks was? Here it is. One moment. One scene. Sadie at the grocery store, Wednesday afternoon. She's at the register. She watches the total climb. She starts putting things back. Keeps the chicken thighs. Puts back the butter. Keeps the rice. Puts back the box of tea she likes. Keeps the beans. Puts back the oranges. She does this with a small smile. Practiced. Calm. No shame. No pity. Just math. The teenage cashier doesn't even notice, but you notice. That was Sadie's life. Quiet. Small. Invisible to almost everyone. And on the wall of her hallway, a framed photo. A young black man in desert camouflage, grinning wide, standing in front of a military truck somewhere in Kuwait. Earl Brooks, 1991. The year he came home from the Gulf and told Sadie he'd never leave her side again. His boots were still by the back door. His Bible was still on the kitchen table, a Veterans of Foreign Wars bookmark holding his last page. And some nights, when the furnace went quiet and the house got too still, Sadie would look at that photo and say out loud, "Earl, this furnace is testing me again." And it might have stayed that way. The quiet life, the empty house, the leaking roof, the small smile at the register. If not for the worst blizzard Ridgemont had seen in 40 years. The storm wasn't supposed to hit until midnight. It arrived at 6. All day the forecast had been saying the same thing. Winter storm warning, heavy snow expected, stay off the roads after dark. Sadie had been watching the sky since noon. She'd lived in Minnesota long enough to read the clouds, and these clouds weren't midnight clouds. These clouds were in a hurry. By 4 o'clock the wind picked up. By 5, the first flakes started falling, thick, fast, and sideways. By 6, you couldn't see the mailbox from the front window. The National Weather Service upgraded the warning to life-threatening at 5:47 p.m. Wind chill, -38 degrees. Visibility, near zero. Phil Taggart's county road crew closed the barricades on Route 11 at the interstate junction by 6:15. Smart move, the right call. But 30 minutes earlier, before the barricades went up, 15 motorcycles had already turned onto Route 11. They didn't know the road was about to close behind them. The Rolling Iron Veterans Club, a nationwide motorcycle fraternity for military veterans. 15 riders on a winter charity ride from Fargo to Minneapolis, raising money for homeless veteran shelters along the route. They rode in bad weather on principle. Their motto was stitched into their back patches: "If we only ride in sunshine, we never ride." These were men who'd served in Iraq, Afghanistan, Kosovo. A little snow didn't scare them. But this wasn't a little snow. This was a whiteout. Within 20 minutes of turning onto Route 11, the road disappeared. No lane markings, no reflectors, no guardrails. Nothing but white in every direction. The group leader, a tall man with a calm voice and steady hands, signaled everyone to slow down and tighten formation. Stay close. Keep your headlight on the tail light ahead of you. Nobody stops. Then 2 bikes hit black ice at the same time. The first rider skidded but stayed upright. The second one didn't. Tommy Greer, 22 years old. Just discharged from the Army 3 months ago. Former medic, the youngest rider in the group. His bike went sideways and slid into a snowbank. Tommy hit the ground hard. He got up, bruised but not broken. But when he tried to restart his bike, nothing happened. The fuel line had frozen solid. The group stopped. 15 men, 8 miles from the nearest town. No cell signal, no shelter in sight. Temperature dropping by the minute. And Tommy was in trouble. His riding gear wasn't rated for this kind of cold. He'd bought it second-hand before the trip. It was all he could afford. The jacket was thin, the gloves were thinner. Within 10 minutes of standing still, his hands turned white. His teeth were chattering so hard he couldn't speak clearly. Dale Emerson, 63, retired Marine, bad knee from a training accident 20 years ago, limped over to Tommy and put both hands on the kid's face. He'd seen this before. He knew the signs. "Hank, we got a problem." "How bad?" "His hands are white. He's slurring." "How long do we have?" "Maybe 2 hours, maybe less. If he stops shivering, it's worse than you think." The tall man, Hank, looked down Route 11 in both directions. Nothing. No headlights, no buildings, no sound except the wind. He made the call. "We push the bikes off the road. We walk, toward any light we can find." "Walk where, Hank? I can't see 50 feet. "Then we walk 50 feet at a time." Nobody argued. These were men who followed orders, not because they were told to, but because they trusted the man giving them. 2 riders supported Tommy between them. Dale gritted his teeth and kept moving on that bad knee. The rest pushed their bikes into the ditch and walked. 45 minutes, in negative 14 degrees, through snow up to their knees. And then, one light. A single yellow glow through the whiteout. Small, flickering, but real. Sadie's porch light. She always left it on. Every night. Even when the electric bill was tight. Even when nobody was coming. Earl used to say, "A dark porch is a closed heart." So she kept it lit. For him. For no one. For whoever might need it. She didn't know that tonight, someone did. Inside the house, Sadie was preparing for the storm alone. She filled the bathtub with water. If the pipes froze, she'd need it. She dragged all her blankets into the living room. The furnace couldn't heat the whole house, so she'd sleep by the vent. Then the furnace rattled. Clicked. Went silent. Pilot light. Again. She knelt down with Earl's old lighter, hands shaking, knees aching, and relit it. The furnace groaned back to life. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Don't you quit on me tonight." Then she heard it. A pounding on the front door, hard, urgent, the kind of knock that doesn't wait for an answer. Sadie's heart jumped. She grabbed Earl's jacket off the hook, walked to the door, opened it. 15 men, covered in snow, ice in their beards, frost on their eyelashes, and at the front, a tall man with steady eyes and a voice that cracked for the first time all night. "Ma'am, please." Sadie looked past him. She saw Tommy, slumped between 2 men, barely conscious, lips blue. She looked back at her house, her small, cold, nearly empty house. And she opened the door wide. "Well, don't just stand there letting the cold in. Come on." 15 strangers walked into Sadie Brooks's home that night. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that the man who knocked on her door had the power to rebuild her entire life. And what Sadie did next? Most people wouldn't have done it for their own family, let alone 15 strangers. The bikers filled her living room in seconds. 15 large men in soaking wet leather, snow melting onto her floor. The room wasn't built for this, barely built for 3. But Sadie didn't stand there calculating. She moved. 31 years in a school cafeteria had trained her for exactly this. She didn't panic. She organized. You, get that boy's wet jacket off. Bathroom's down the hall. Grab every blanket on that shelf and wrap him up. 2 bikers moved immediately. You, tall one, kitchen. Fill the kettle. Stove's gas. Blue knob on the left. Done. She looked at Dale. She'd already seen it. The way he shifted his weight. The stiff right leg. She handed him a towel without a word. Sit down. Wrap that knee. How did you? I fed kids for 30 years. I know what hurt looks like when someone's pretending it doesn't. He sat. Tommy was worst. They got him onto the couch, wrapped in 2 blankets, shivering hard, lips still blue. Sadie knelt beside him, hand on his forehead. How old are you, baby? 22. Lord. She looked at the men standing over him. Keep him talking. Don't let him sleep. Not yet. Then she walked to the kitchen, opened the pantry. A bag of rice, half full. Dried beans. Chicken thighs, the ones she'd kept at the register. Half a loaf of bread. Some flour. A tin of lard. A few spices. That was everything. She didn't hesitate. Rice into a pot. Beans into hot water. Chicken seasoned and into the oven. Then she pulled out Earl's cast-iron skillet. Black, heavy, perfectly seasoned from decades of use. Mixed flour, lard, salt, and water. Cornbread batter from scratch. Into the oven next to the chicken. She added extra water to the beans, turned it into stew, stretching it. Cut the bread thin enough that every man would get a slice. The smell hit the living room within 20 minutes. One by one, the bikers went quiet. They just watched her. A 74-year-old woman in a patched army jacket, moving around a tiny kitchen like she'd been waiting her whole life for this moment. One rider whispered to Dale, "Is she really cooking for all of us?" Dale shook his head slowly. Not disbelief. Reverence. She served every man personally. Mismatched bowls on every surface. Kitchen table, coffee table, TV stand. Rice and beans and chicken stew, cornbread on top, bread on the side. Tommy got the biggest portion. She served herself last. Barely a scoop. A spoonful of rice, a small piece of cornbread. Hank stopped eating. "Man, that's not enough." "It's plenty. Take some of mine. I've been eating small my whole life. Hasn't killed me yet." She said it with a grin. Not performing, just a fact. After dinner, she gave up her bedroom, gave up Earl's study, pulled every blanket, every towel, even the curtains from the back bedroom, made pallets on the floor from couch cushions and old quilts, put Tommy closest to the furnace vent, checked on him twice. The second time, his color was coming back. She pulled the blanket higher and whispered, "There you go, baby. You're all right." She brought Dale a warm washcloth for his knee. He hadn't asked. "You remind me of my mother," Dale said quietly. "Then your mother raised you right. Now stop talking and rest that leg." By midnight, most men were asleep, sprawled across every room. 15 grown men in a house built for 2. At the kitchen table, Sadie and Hank, she poured him the last cup of instant coffee, her last packet, stirred it into hot water and set it in front of him like it was nothing. It wasn't nothing. "You live out here alone?" 6 years now. My husband Earl passed." "Veteran?" He was looking at the photo on the wall, the young man in desert camo. "Gulf War, Desert Storm. Came back different. Never talked about what happened over there." Hank was quiet. His hand was wrapped around the mug. She noticed something on his right hand, a heavy ring, platinum, engraved with some kind of symbol. It didn't look like a biker ring. It looked expensive, institutional. She didn't ask. "I did 3 tours in Iraq," Hank said. "I know that silence." Something passed between them. Not romantic, deeper. Recognition. 2 people shaped by war and loss. "You got people waiting for you somewhere?" 3,000 of them. Sadie laughed. 3,000? Sure you do. He smiled but didn't correct her. She didn't notice that every biker had deferred to this man all night. They checked with him before sitting, before eating, before speaking to her. Dale called him Sir once, then caught himself and switched to Hank. Subtle, but everywhere. By 2 a.m., the house was quiet. 15 men slept warm because of one woman who had almost nothing. But Sadie Brooks had no idea what she'd set in motion, because Hank Caldwell wasn't just a biker passing through, and by morning, the whole world was about to find out. When the sun came up, the storm had passed, but what happened next nearly broke Hank Caldwell's composure, and that man does not break easily. Sadie had been up since 5, hadn't slept more than 2 hours. Every time the furnace clicked, she checked it. Every time Tommy shifted, she checked him too. 5 eggs left. 5. For 15 men. She cracked all 5, whisked them thin, stretched with water the way her mother taught her, scrambled in Earl's skillet over low heat, reheated the leftover cornbread, cut it small. No coffee left. Hank got the last packet. So she boiled water, sliced the last lemon into thin rounds. Hot lemon water. That was breakfast. 15 portions, each one barely a mouthful, but every plate laid out neatly. The bikers ate in silence. Not the comfortable kind, the kind where men are trying very hard not to cry. Tommy kept his head down. He wouldn't look at Sadie. When the last plate was cleared, Hank stood, pulled out a money clip, peeled off several $100 bills, set them on the table. "Ma'am, please, at least cover the groceries." Sadie pushed the bills back. "I didn't open my door for payment. I opened it because it was the right thing to do." "Sadie, that food was yours. Those blankets were yours. That coffee was your last packet. You gave us everything." She folded his fingers around the money, held them. "Then I gave it freely, and free things don't come with a price tag." She patted his hand once, turned around, started washing dishes. Outside, the bikers geared up. Dale brought Hank's bag from the hallway, dark canvas with a small logo stitched in silver. Iron Ridge. Sadie walked past it, handing out dry towels, glanced at the logo, didn't register it. She was checking Tommy's gloves. One by one, the bikers came to the porch, handshakes, hugs. One man pressed his forehead to her hand. "You saved that kid's life, ma'am." Tommy stood in front of her, couldn't speak, jaw tight, eyes red. She pulled him in and hugged him hard, whispered something in his ear. He nodded, wiped his face, walked to his bike. Then Hank took her hand in both of his. "You have no idea what you did for us last night." "I made dinner, that's all." He shook his head slowly, let go, rode away. Sadie stood on that porch until the last taillight disappeared. Then she went inside, sat in Earl's chair, let out a long breath. "Well, Earl, that was something." It was over. At least, she thought it was. 3 days passed, and then the strange things started happening. It started with a truck. Tuesday morning, Sadie was in the kitchen, rinsing out the same pot she'd used to feed 15 men 3 nights ago. She heard an engine outside, Heavy. Diesel. She looked through the window. A delivery truck. White, clean, with a logo she'd never seen before. Some specialty grocery company out of Minneapolis. A man in the uniform climbed out, walked to the back, and started unloading boxes. Sadie opened the front door. "Excuse me, I think you've got the wrong house." The driver checked his clipboard. "Sadie Brooks, 1412 Route 11? "That's me, but I didn't order anything." "Doesn't matter, ma'am. It's paid in full." He set another box on the porch. "No return address." "What do you mean, no return address? Who paid for this?" "I just drive the truck, ma'am." 12 boxes. She counted them as he unloaded. Fresh produce. Things she hadn't bought in months. Quality cuts of meat. Bags of coffee. Real coffee. Baking supplies. Flour, sugar, butter, vanilla extract. Canned goods. Enough food to fill her pantry twice over. Sadie stood on the porch and stared at those boxes for a long time. She brought them inside. She didn't have a choice. It was 9 degrees out. But she felt strange about it. Like she was holding something that didn't belong to her. 2 days later, Thursday, another truck. This time, a heating oil company. The driver filled her tank. Full. She'd been rationing oil for weeks, keeping the thermostat as low as she could stand, wearing Earl's jacket indoors, sleeping under 3 blankets. "Who's paying for this?" she asked the driver. "Account's prepaid through the end of winter. That's all I've got." "Prepaid? By who?" "Came through a corporate account, ma'am. They didn't leave a name." Corporate account. Sadie turned that phrase over in her mind. She didn't know anyone with a corporate account. She didn't know anyone with a corporation. Then, Friday, the phone call. An unfamiliar number, a woman's voice, professional, polished. "Mrs. Brooks, my name is Catherine Wells. I'm calling on behalf of the Rolling Iron Veterans Foundation. I understand you hosted several of our members during the recent storm." "I did. Is everything all right?" "More than all right, ma'am. Someone would like to visit you. In 2 days, if you're willing." "Visit me? Who?" A pause. "Mrs. Brooks, I think it's best if he explains it himself." That night, Sadie told Denise everything. The groceries, the oil, the phone call. Denise pulled out her phone, typed in Rolling Iron Veterans Foundation, scrolled, and then her eyes went wide. She turned the phone toward Sadie. A website. Professional. A nationwide organization. Thousands of members. Charity rides that had raised millions. A board of directors with names she didn't recognize. And a photo of the founder. Clean-shaven, gray suit, standing in front of a glass office building in Manhattan. Confident. Powerful. Sadie stared at that photo for a long time. Something about the eyes. The way they looked straight through the camera. Steady. Familiar. She couldn't place it. Not yet. But in exactly 48 hours, she would. And nothing in Ridgemont would ever be the same. What she didn't know was that the man who knocked on her door during the worst blizzard in 40 years was the founder and CEO of a $3 billion company, and he hadn't stopped thinking about her since the moment he rode away. Let me tell you who Hank Caldwell really was. His full name was Henry Caldwell III, 58 years old, founder, chairman, and CEO of Iron Ridge Construction Group, one of the largest infrastructure and development companies in the United States. Federal contracts, military bases, highway systems, hospitals, bridges. Net worth? $2.8 billion. That ring on his right hand? The platinum one, Sadie noticed catching the light, wasn't a biker ring. It was the Iron Ridge Founder's Seal. Only one had the Roman numeral 3 engraved inside. Hank's. But here's what made him different from every other billionaire you've ever heard of. He grew up with nothing. Rural Ohio, a house smaller than Sadie's. His father worked at a meatpacking plant. His mother cleaned offices at night. He enlisted the day he turned 18. 3 tours in Iraq. Came home with a Bronze Star, a bad shoulder, and a silence that took years to break. Used his GI Bill, got an engineering degree, started a small contracting company in 2001 with 2 employees and a used pickup truck. 20 years later, Iron Ridge Construction Group, $3 billion in annual revenue, 4,000 employees. But every winter, Hank got on his motorcycle and rode. He co-founded the Rolling Iron Veterans Club in 2005. 8 riders at the start. Now, 36 states, 3,000 active members. The foundation arm funded veteran housing, addiction recovery, and job training. Why ride in winter, with a private jet and a penthouse in Manhattan? Comfort is the enemy of gratitude. You forget what cold feels like. You forget what those men are still going through. On the road, he wasn't a CEO. He was just Hank. Same jacket, same boots, no entourage, just a rider. So when a 74-year-old woman in a patched army jacket opened her door and let 15 frozen strangers in, Hank experienced something he hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. Not from doing something wrong, from realizing someone who had almost nothing was more generous than someone who had almost everything. On the ride back to Minneapolis, Hank was quiet. Dale rode beside him for 60 miles without a word. At a rest stop outside St. Cloud, Dale pulled up. "You all right?" Hank's hands were shaking on the handlebars, not from cold. "She gave us everything, Dale. Everything she had. And she wouldn't take my money. She pushed it back like I'd insulted her." He looked at the Iron Ridge ring on his hand. "I've built bridges, hospitals, highways. I've written checks with more zeros than most people will ever see. And none of it has ever hit me the way that woman's pot of rice and beans did." That night, he called his executive assistant. 3 words. "Find out everything." 48 hours. Full report. Pension, $1,140 a month. VA benefits, $450. House, structurally compromised. Estimated repair cost, $85,000. Medical, untreated arthritis, deferred dental, skipped specialists. Ridgemont, school enrollment down 40%. 2 businesses closed last year. No investment, no plan. And Sadie, 31 years feeding other people's children. Never missed a day. Never asked for anything. Hank closed the folder. "This woman fed us with her last groceries, Dale, and no one in this country has ever taken care of her." He picked up his phone. "Set up a visit. I'm going back." 8 days after the blizzard, a black SUV stopped in front of Sadie's farmhouse. Hank stepped out. Clean jeans, pressed jacket, same boots, same walk. Sadie opened the door. 1 second. 2. 3. "The backer?" "Yes, ma'am." "You clean up different." "So I've been told." Same kitchen table, same 2 chairs. She made him coffee from the bags that had appeared on her porch. He told her, simply, "Sadie, my company built the bridge you crossed to get into town. My foundation has housed 4,000 veterans. I've built hospitals and highways on 3 continents." She was holding her coffee mug very still. "And in all of that, all those years, all those zeros, nobody has ever done for me what you did that night." "I just made dinner." "No. You opened your door when you had every reason to keep it closed. You gave us your food when you didn't have enough for yourself. And you refused my money because you believe kindness isn't a transaction." He paused. "I've forgotten that somewhere along the way." Sadie looked at Earl's photo, then back at Hank. "Earl would have done the same thing. Only difference is he would have complained about it the whole time. Hank laughed, a real one. But he didn't come back just to say thank you. He came back with a plan. And when he told Sadie what it was, she had to sit down. What he proposed wasn't charity. It was something Sadie Brooks never imagined, and it was going to change not just her life, but the entire town of Ridgemont. Hank set his coffee mug down, leaned forward, hands folded on the kitchen table, the same table where Sadie had served him her last packet of instant coffee 8 days ago. Sadie, I'm going to tell you 3 things, and I need you to hear all 3 before you say no. She raised an eyebrow. Who says I'm going to say no? Because I know you, and you're going to try. He was right. She was already preparing to. First thing, Hank said, your house. Sadie's back stiffened. Just slightly, but he noticed. Iron Ridge Construction is going to renovate this house, top to bottom. New roof, new windows, new furnace, updated plumbing, updated electrical, insulation, a new porch. Sadie shook her head before he finished the sentence. I can't accept that. I'm not done. You don't need to be done. I can't accept that. Sadie, that's too much. I'm not a charity case. I've never been a charity case, and I'm not starting now. Hank didn't flinch. He'd expected this. Word for word. Let me ask you something. Do you know what my crews do between November and March? Build things, I imagine. Not as much as you'd think. Winter slows everything down. Half my teams are on reduced hours. They need training projects. Real ones. Houses with real problems. Your house has real problems. So you're telling me fixing my roof is a favor to you? I'm telling you my crew needs a winter project, and your house needs a roof. You'd be doing me a favor. Sadie stared at him. She knew exactly what he was doing. She wasn't foolish, but there was something in the way he said it, not with pity, not with performance, that made her pause. She looked at Earl's photo on the wall, the young man in desert camo, grinning. He'd say I was being stubborn. Were you always this stubborn? Worse. Ask anyone. A long breath. She pressed her lips together, looked at her hands. All right, the roof. But I'm not going to sit here and be grateful on camera for anyone. Nobody's bringing a camera. Good. She accepted, barely, like she was doing him the biggest favor of his life. Hank nodded, moved on. Second thing. Sadie braced herself. I want to establish a permanent fund through the Rolling Iron Veterans Foundation. It would provide warm meals to homeless and struggling veterans in shelters across Minnesota every winter. Hot food, real meals, not canned soup from a donation bin. Sadie was listening. Her guard was still up, but lower now. I want to name it after your husband. The room went very still. The Earl Brooks Veterans Warm Meal Fund. Sadie's hands, which had been wrapped around her coffee mug, went slack. She set the mug down because she didn't trust herself to hold it steady. You want to? Name it after Earl. Yes. Why? Because of what you told me that night, at this table. You said he came back from the Gulf and never talked about what happened over there. That's not just Earl's story. That's thousands of men, tens of thousands. They come home silent, and too many of them end up hungry and invisible. Sadie's eyes filled. She didn't blink. She didn't wipe them. She just let them fill. Earl would have loved that. Her voice was barely a whisper. He always said the hardest part about coming home wasn't the war. It was feeling invisible. Hank let that sit. He didn't rush past it. Some moments need room. I'm committing $500,000 to start the fund, with annual matching from the foundation after that. Every winter. Ongoing. Sadie pressed her fingers to her lips, closed her eyes, opened them. $500,000. Yes, for a fund named after a man who never asked anyone for anything his whole life. That's exactly why it should carry his name. She looked at Earl's photo again, this time for a long time, the young soldier standing in the desert, smiling like the whole world was ahead of him. "Okay," she said, quietly. "Okay." Hank waited a moment, then, "Third thing." "Lord, there's more?" "There's more." He told her about Ridgemont. He'd had his team look at the town, not just Sadie, the whole community, the declining population, the closed businesses, the empty storefronts, the grain depot on Main Street that had been sitting abandoned for 6 years. "Here's what I'm proposing. Iron Ridge partners with the town of Ridgemont to renovate that grain depot into a veterans community center, job training programs, a meeting hall, and a full commercial kitchen." He paused. "A kitchen, Sadie, where anyone can learn to cook, where kids can come after school and learn the way you learned, the way you taught everyone else." She was watching him very carefully now. "I'll bring Iron Ridge's small business incubator program to Ridgemont. That means capital and mentorship for local entrepreneurs who want to grow. Brenda Whitfield's diner, for example. She's been holding on with her fingernails. We can help." He leaned back. "And I want you on the community advisory board." "Me?" "You know every family in this town. You fed their children. You fed their grandchildren. Nobody is better positioned to know what this community needs." "Hank, I'm 74 years old." "And you outworked 15 men half your age in a blizzard. I think you'll manage." Sadie almost laughed. Almost. She caught it before it escaped and turned it into a slow exhale. But she wasn't done. "I'll do it," she said. "But I've got conditions." Hank raised his eyebrows. He wasn't used to conditions, not from this side of the table. "That kitchen in the community center, it has to offer free cooking classes for local kids. Not optional, not sometimes, every week." "Done." "And the meal fund? The one you're naming after Earl?" "Yes." "It serves everyone, not just veterans. Anyone who's hungry. Anyone who shows up." Hank opened his mouth, closed it. "Hunger doesn't check your DD-214, Sadie said. Hank stared at her. Then he laughed. A real, full, surprised laugh. The kind that comes from being outmaneuvered by someone who wasn't even trying to win. "Deal. And one more thing." "There's more?" "You keep Earl's skillet out of the renovation. Everything else in that kitchen can go. That skillet stays." "The cast iron?" "It was his mother's before it was his. And it was his before it was mine. That skillet's not part of any construction project." Hank held up both hands. "The skillet stays." "Good. Then we have an agreement." She extended her hand across the table. He took it. They shook once, firm. In the span of one morning, Sadie Brooks went from wondering how she'd afford to fix a leaking roof to sitting at the center of a plan that would reshape her entire community. But the biggest surprise? It was still coming. And then came the morning that Sadie Brooks opened her front door and couldn't believe what she saw. 3 weeks after Hank's visit, a Saturday, early February, sun barely up. Sadie was making coffee, the good coffee from those Minneapolis bags. She still felt a little guilty every time she opened one. Then she heard it, a low rumble from the south end of Route 11. It got louder and louder. The windows started to vibrate. Her phone rang. Denise, screaming. "Sadie, get out here! Right now!" She grabbed Earl's jacket and stepped onto the porch. She stopped. Route 11. Both directions, as far as she could see. Motorcycles. Hundreds of them. Chrome catching the morning sun. Engines rumbling like a heartbeat. 312. Riders from rolling iron chapters across 8 states: Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Illinois, Michigan. Behind the motorcycles, flatbed trucks loaded with lumber, roofing materials, window frames, an Iron Ridge crew already unloading supplies, food trucks, generators, a portable tool shed on a trailer. This wasn't a visit. This was a mission. Sadie stood with her hand over her mouth. Denise was crying across the road. Reggie was running between the bikes, counting out loud and losing track past 50. A rider walked up and handed her a card. On the back, handwritten, "Because you opened your door, now we open ours." She pressed it to her chest, went inside for a minute. When she came back out, her eyes were dry. She clapped her hands once. "All right, who's in charge of this mess?" The build happened over 4 weekends. Weekend 1. Roof stripped and replaced. 30 riders plus Iron Ridge crew. Sadie tried carrying shingles up the ladder. They redirected her to supervision. One worker whispered, "She runs a tighter operation than our foreman." Weekend 2. Windows, insulation, furnace. Plastic sheeting came down for good. New double-pane glass. New high-efficiency furnace. Tommy Greer came back. He'd been calling Sadie weekly since the blizzard. Worked beside her. Learned basic plumbing. Handed her tools before she asked. Weekend 3. Electrical, plumbing, porch. The new porch was built with salvaged wood from a barn on Earl's old family property. Hank had found it and had the timber restored. When Sadie touched the railing, she went quiet. She recognized the grain. She didn't say anything. Weekend 4. Paint, kitchen upgrade, finishing touches. New appliances, new countertops. When the crew asked about the cast iron skillet, Sadie picked it up and held it to her chest. "Everything else can go. That stays." It stayed. Then the ripple started. Brenda Whitfield's diner. 4 weekends of bikers and crews meant 4 weekends of packed tables. Hank's incubator program helped her secure a low-interest loan. She renovated, expanded, hired 2 employees, first new jobs in Ridgemont in 2 years. The Veterans Community Center broke ground in April. The old grain depot on Main Street, gutted and rebuilt. Local news covered it, then regional, then national. Grandmother, who sheltered 15 bikers in blizzard, becomes heart of veteran community revival. The Earl Brooks Veterans Warm Meal Fund launched that October. First winter, 4,200 meals across 12 shelters. Sadie spoke at the kickoff dinner, hands gripping the podium, nervous, first time near a microphone. "My husband spent his whole life being quiet about what he'd been through. He served his country, he came home, and he carried it alone. This fund makes sure no veteran has to be hungry while they're being quiet." Standing ovation. 2 minutes. Tommy Greer enrolled in Iron Ridge's construction management apprenticeship that spring. A reporter asked what inspired the change. He didn't mention the program, didn't mention Hank. "She looked at me that night like I was her own grandson. She checked on me twice. She whispered something before I left. 'You're going to be just fine, baby. The hard part's already behind you.'" He paused. Nobody had looked at me like that since I got home. Ridgemont wasn't a dying town anymore. It wasn't booming either. But it was breathing again. 1 diner, 1 community center, 1 fund. It was a town that had been waiting for someone to believe in it. And it took one 74-year-old woman with a leaking roof and a pot of rice and beans to make that happen. 1 year later. January again. Another blizzard warning scrolling across the bottom of the TV screen. Another night of wind and snow coming for Ridgemont. But this time, everything was different. Route 11 had been resurfaced. Iron Ridge municipal contract. Reflective markers lined both sides of the road now, and at the 3-mile mark, Right about where Tommy Greer had collapsed in the snow sat a small, heated structure. Emergency blankets inside, a first aid kit, a phone with a direct line to county dispatch. A plaque on the door read, "The Sadie Brooks Waypoint, because no door should stay closed in a storm." Hank had insisted on the name. Sadie had insisted he was being ridiculous. He did it anyway. Inside the house, Sadie's house, you could feel the difference before you saw it. Warm, solid, quiet in the good way. New roof, no bucket in the back bedroom. New windows, real glass, no plastic. The furnace hummed low and steady. No clicking, no groaning, no bargaining with God at midnight. But it was still Sadie's house. Earl's photo hung in the same spot on the hallway wall. Same smile, same desert camo. New frame. Tommy had given it to her on her birthday. He'd driven 4 hours to deliver it in person. Earl's cast iron skillet sat on the new stove, seasoned and warm. Earl's boots, cleaned, polished, preserved, still by the back door, right where they'd always been. Some things you don't move. Not ever. Sadie was in the kitchen, not alone. Reggie Powell stood beside her on a step stool, flour on his nose, tongue poking out the side of his mouth, concentrating harder than he'd ever concentrated on homework.
"Nana, Sadie, how do I know when it's mixed enough? When it stops looking angry and starts looking smooth. Cornbread batter looks angry? Everything looks angry when you beat it too hard. Be gentle."
3 more kids from the neighborhood sat at the kitchen table, books open, pencils moving. The kitchen had become the after-school gathering spot since the renovation. Every afternoon. No formal program, no sign-up sheet. Just Sadie's door, open, like always. The phone rang. Hank. They talked every few weeks now. An unlikely friendship. A 75-year-old retired school cook and a billionaire CEO. But it worked. They talked about the fund, about Tommy's progress in the apprenticeship program, about Brenda's diner. She was thinking about adding a breakfast menu. And sometimes they just talked. About nothing. About Earl. About the weather. Today, Hank had news. The Earl Brooks Fund just passed 10,000 meals served. Sadie went quiet. She turned away from the stove, pressed her hand flat against the counter.
10,000?
10,000. 12 shelters. 3 states now. Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa. We're expanding to Illinois next winter. She didn't speak for a moment. The kids at the table kept writing. Reggie kept stirring. The furnace hummed.
"Tell them I said thank you,"
she said. Her voice was steady but thin.
"And tell them Earl says thank you too."
After she hung up, she stood very still, looking at the photo on the wall. The young soldier in the desert, the grin that hadn't changed in 35 years.
10,000, Earl, she whispered. "Can you believe that?"
Then, a knock at the door. Denise answered. A woman and 2 small children stood on the porch, snow on their coats. The woman's eyes were red. Her car had broken down a mile up Route 11. The early edge of the storm had caught her off guard. Denise started to explain that they should call a tow truck, that there was a warming station up the road, that... Sadie's voice came from the kitchen.
"Bring them in. There's plenty."
3 more places at the table, 3 more bowls, cornbread from the skillet, hot coffee from the pot. The woman sat down. Her children climbed into chairs. The little girl looked around the warm kitchen with wide eyes.
"What do you say?"
the mother whispered.
"Thank you, ma'am."
Sadie smiled. "You're welcome, baby. Eat." Nothing had changed about who Sadie Brooks was. Not one thing. She was the same woman who'd opened her door a year ago with a broken furnace and an empty pantry. The only difference was what her kindness could reach now. The porch light was on, like always, Earl's light, Sadie's light, still burning. Some people wait for the world to be kind to them before they're kind to the world. Sadie Brooks never waited. If you're still here, thank you. Truly. I tell a lot of stories on this channel. Stories about twists, reversals, moments that catch you off guard. But this one sat with me differently. So let me ask you something. If you heard that knock on the worst night of the year with almost nothing to your name, would you open the door? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. If this story moved you, leave a like, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and subscribe, because there are more stories like this coming, and I don't want you to miss a single one.
If you are still here, thank you, truly. I tell a lot of stories on this channel, but this one sat with me differently. Sadie Brooks had a broken furnace, 5S, and $1,500 a month, and when 50 frozen strangers show up at her door, she gave them everything. A billionaire handed her cash the next morning. She put it back because Sadie understood something most people forget. Generosity isn't about what you have, it's about what you are willing to part with. The world measures wealth in zeros. Sadie measures it in bowls of rice and beans served from her last groceries, and that's one act. From a woman the world forgot existed, fed 10,000 veterans, rebuilt a dying tower, and taught a man worth $3 billion what weakness actually means. So let me ask you this. If you heard that knock on the worst night of the year, would you open the door? And here's the deeper question. What if the thing that changes someone's life forever is something you already have, and you just been telling yourself it is not enough? Tell me in the comments if this story moved you. Leave a like and share it with someone who needs it today. Subscribe. More stories like this are coming, and I don't want you to miss one.